Welcome to the Marketing Remix, presented by Red Door Interactive. I'm Reed Carr, CEO of Red Door Interactive. Our show is a senior level marketer's resource for navigating our ever-evolving landscape. In each episode, in about 20 minutes, experts from different marketing disciplines representing different buyer touchpoints tackle one important marketing topic. Then, what do you need to know, and how does it affect the buyer? Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Remix. Today, we're here to talk about optimization. In today's marketing landscape, marketers rely on data and technology more than ever before. While marketing technology allows us to gather data, it also provides the ability to automate and optimize nearly every phase of the digital marketing lifecycle. Enter marketing optimization, the process by which a brand or organization improves their marketing efforts and ultimately maximizes their desired business outcomes. In this episode, we'll discuss optimization, its impact on today's marketing tactics, and how it's reshaping marketing strategies as a whole. Today we have Justin Gabbert, our Director of Marketing Strategy and Optimization here at Red Door, as well as Kevin Aaron, Manager of Paid Search, also at Red Door. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Reed.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start jumping right in here. Let's set the stage here and define a little bit about what we're talking about. At a high level, what do we mean when we use the term optimization? Justin, how would you define it?
Yeah, so in marketing, more often than not, we're operating in an environment where we have constrained resources, right? So, it could be budget, it could be people, but what we're trying to do with optimization is stretch those resources further. So we're trying to make, iterative improvements. And to me, a lot of times when we're talking about optimization, it's closely tied to experimentation. And that a lot of times we're experimenting in a statistical format, scientific format to understand how we can make an improvement with the resources we have.
Okay. So, and the way I hear it there, it's pretty incremental, trying new things. Some work, some don't. But at the end of the day, you've got a method by which you're making your decisions.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Kevin, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I've always looked at it for kind of like Justin's saying, just kind of get more bang for your buck. You're basically, whether it's money, whether it's people, the resource issue is exactly what we're talking about here. It's getting the best out of what you have. And then the other flip side of it is also kind of enhancing the experience for the people you're addressing. Obviously you're out here as a marketing team, we're targeting people, we're trying to attract people to us. So optimizing that experience for them is a big part of the marketing optimization mix. There's also a third pillar that a lot of us have to adhere to, especially working with Google and a lot of the other platforms, and that is kind of the best practices and moving along with optimizations, whether that be algorithms and organic search, new rules in ads, new criteria in media. All these things kind of are things we have to keep optimizing in order to get the best scores out of the platforms and pay the lowest cost there as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I see as it relates to optimization is that it lives at a lot of different stages of the funnel, and I think hopefully that's what we're here to talk a little bit of today is where does it live? Obviously we know search engine optimization, conversion rate optimization, obviously that's not the only places. What are some of the other areas that people can be optimizing within the marketing funnel?
Yeah, so when we talk about optimization at the various stages of the funnel, we talk about awareness right at the very top, and traditionally, optimization has really been towards the, lowest CPM, cost per impression more so. And that's basically saying, what's the cheapest form of advertising, right? Which isn't always, optimal in that case. So we start talking about audiences. How do we reach the right person with a very valuable impression and valuable engagement? So that's where optimization can come and play there, where we can be testing different messages, testing creative, we can even get into testing, kind of core identities of a brand to some case and doing some focus groups that way. So those are great ways at the top of the funnel. As you move your way down, we have search engine optimization. As we get into the paid search side, Kevin can talk a lot about keyword optimization and things like that. And then, email, of course, too. There's lots of ways to optimize and improve there, whether it be simple subject line, optimizations, but probably more importantly, right, is starting to get into segmentation and what audience responds well to what type of messaging, what content they want to see. Give them more of what they want and less of, the junk that they're going to delete and hide away.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times people forget that part of it, that they think about the different tactics they can optimize or something like that. But optimizing by audience and identifying who matters in that respect is also a huge cross section by which because one optimization for one audience is different than maybe another for another more important audience. Kevin, anything you want to talk about there from an audience standpoint?
I think the segmenting point is huge because you are optimizing now, even in paid search or search engine optimization, you're almost going beyond the keyword, which has been the staple for so long, and really looking at these audiences and how you can adhere your messaging, adhere your bid prices, your time of day that you're bidding on these folks, and even what they might see based on, where they are in your funnel, because these things. You have so much more identifying pieces of information that you can segment your audience, which allows you to change that messaging, re-engage them, because we know one click to one conversion just never happens. And then even from there, once you have those segments, there's so many cool tools in these platforms that allow you, when you have the right segments, a good converting part, to expand, get similar audiences using their artificial intelligence and other things to get similar people that you may not know how to attract, or may not even know that they need your tools or services right in front of you. So those segments, I think, are huge today and really moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, not all audiences are created equal, so different values for different things and different ways you want to use them. So, I mean, obviously it can be pretty complicated thinking of it that way. And if people aren't really optimizing, I would say probably a lot of brands are optimizing for search or something like that. That's one that people tend to gravitate toward. But thinking at a macro level of optimization through the funnel and how complicated it could be, where's a good place for a brand to start?
Yeah, and I think I'll start. The reason we're all doing this, and coming back to the funnel, right, is that we're trying to make the buck stretch further, right? And if you optimize lower in the funnel, one of the key things there is that we can take those funds, if we're converting people at a lower cost, and push them back up at the top of the funnel. So that's kind of where the end goal is that we're trying to reduce friction down as the funnel goes, and then pushing that budget back up to the top so you can reach more people. So I think that's kind of that's where we want to start, right? Is how can we at the bottom of the funnel start making our dollars stretch further? It's easier. We know that somebody is already, close to converting. They're in that consideration phase. It's maybe you down to another competitor at that point. So if we can convert them at a lower cost, it makes it a lot easier for us to have more money up top of the funnel. So I think that's typically where you start. And then getting into kind of how that, the tangible of what do I do next, would be around the analysis. I think is key there to start, because it's hard to build a hypothesis unless you have some sort of insight to drive your hypothesis. Yep. So that's I would avoid doing kind of just best practice hypotheses, things like that. Yep. Start thinking about we're noticing there's a dropout point here. We think that this piece here is maybe, our conversion rates are a little low. Let's dig into that. We think this audience is more valuable than this audience. Let's focus there based on this data and information. So always starting there. And then I think from there you start testing hypotheses, right? And taking it from there. And that gets into the whole testing realm. But, I'm sure Kevin will attest to the fact that a lot of it's based on, his hypotheses are based on the data he sees and information he's looking at on a daily basis. Yeah.
There's a sort of a linear process that can go to it at the idea of collecting data, analyzing, refine it. But, will that be different in that linear process? Is it different by tactic or different things like that? Kevin, are there different ways you're looking at it from your perspective?
I think so. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I think, like you said, the process is kind of defined in that you need the information, you need to look at the information, and you need to analyze what that information means. That's kind of consistent. However, what that is can vary a lot. And I think one of the key points is being open to testing. I think a lot of people, whether it's launching a site or launching an ad campaign, kind of just want to believe it's going to work. And I think knowing that you're testing all the time, every time, is kind of key to this process. And a test is different, right? I mean, you're testing keywords. You may be able to compile statistical data very quickly and say this keyword worked, this keyword doesn't. When you're looking at audiences, you're looking at maybe ad creative or landing pages, it's a whole different mix of people that get involved in. You can have data that says this page isn't converting, but then what's going to make that convert? You've got to bring creative people into a process. Right. And how that starts to get into the mix and how you kind of work with those people is definitely different than you would just saying this word doesn't work, or this bid isn't desirable, or this platform from a media buy perspective going with this particular vendor was not very successful for us, and therefore we move on. Those are very consistent and linear, but as you start to move into messaging and audiences, I think there's all different kinds of ways you got to look at that spectrum.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, actually go back to one of the things you were talking about, Justin, related to the value of all of this stuff. I think there's something you talk about when you start down at the bottom part of the funnel and work your way up. You said something to the effect in the past of, if you double your conversion rate on the site, then,
Yeah, it's a lot less expensive to double your conversion rate than it is to, go out and spend twice as much money to acquire the same amount of users.
Yeah.
Doubling your conversion rate is not always easy, but, incremental gains, right? If you make a 10% improvement at the bottom of the funnel, right? That's a lot of money that can stretch up further across the way. So it's much easier to kind of make the improvement there and then talk about spending more money to acquire more users.
Well, yeah, you hear that from clients. They always feel like they don't have enough from a media budget or something like that. And this is a way to kind of have a better effect on the media budget. If they have $1 million to spend, you double the conversion rate. Now it's effectively a $2 million media budget.
Yep.
So there's ways to find money from that standpoint. It's incredibly valuable. Kevin, what would you do with a couple more, another $1 million?
Well, it's funny because I look at it both ways. So, people have always said, well, what do I need to spend? Or this is what I have to spend. And optimization should unleash you from that kind of theory that I have a finite number, right? Really, you should be looking at return on ad spend or a value that you're optimizing towards. And if you hit that, who needs a budget?
Right.
You're telling me that if I can sell 1,000 more for you at the same rate, you don't want to do that. Now, granted, you have finite resources, that comes into play, but that's what cracks me up. And a lot of people will look at it not so much as, the conversion side and making that better because that seems like a hard and time-consuming investment. They kind of want to just throw more money at it and then often get upset about the amount of money that they've thrown and not seen better results. So in my world, as a marketer that is often paid by a percentage of the ad spend, there's a false motivation to drive that ad spend that I've had to fight for a long time. The idea is to optimize that ad spend. So exactly, you spend more because you're making more. It's not a cost center, it's a profit center. And I think that's the realization that optimization can bring people to.
Yeah. And that goes back to the idea too. Audiences are different. So there's higher value audiences you can spend more to attract and convert them better or something like that as well. So spending that time and effort to figure out who they are and what it's worth for you to attract them is kind of a value exercise.
Yep.
So how would you say then, as it relates to all of this that we're talking about, how is it affecting today's marketing tactics? Obviously we have search and paid media and email and all the different things we can be doing. Where does this fit in and how is it changing the process for the tactics that we are deploying right now?
Yeah, I think when it comes to optimization, I think setting the expectation that failure is okay as long as it's calculated failure and it's quick failure. A lot of companies now are embracing that kind of concept of let's get something into market and then we can optimize and experiment and improve from there. Kevin was talking about testing channels, testing media buys. That's okay. And just make it a controlled experiment and then improve and optimize from there. So that's kind of a mentality I think that's starting to shift, is that it's okay to test something as long as you're not, spending 10% of your budget on tests. Of course, we never want to do that. But you can think of it as your portfolio, right? At any point with your ad spend portfolio, you want to make sure you have some budget going towards and finding those new opportunities, and hopefully, beating out competitors because of that.
Yeah. Kevin, how's it changing what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
It makes us smarter. I think having the data and having it faster and having it analyzed. We're really fortunate at Red Door to have an amazing analytics team that works with us as well. So Justin's a part of that and a lot of other great minds that, can you get us the numbers and get us some insights on it quickly? And that's to Justin's point. You want to test, but you want to test frequently and you want to set barriers that aren't going to lag too long so you can make good decisions, because the rules change, whether it's algorithms in organic, whether it's, the amount of ads that show up on a search page or where they show up, those things change every year or every few months at this point in time. So keeping up with that is kind of what optimization allows us to do. We know what works for us. So when a change happens, we find the strategy that adjusts. If we haven't been optimizing and figuring out what works for us from a baseline, then we're kind of fudging it as we go and kind of figuring it out and hoping for the best. So really knowing what's working for you and then adjusting to what these platforms do is kind of huge for all of us.
So that's interesting. Related to then, obviously, as algorithms change or all the other technology and things that are in the process change, how is that? Do we go back and re-optimize or how does it reshape a hypothesis or something like that? If are running down a testing roadmap, and then something in Google changes. I mean, how do we react to that? Is it?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty big question right now is how do you avoid bias in optimizing towards something, and then basically concluding your optimization efforts once you've optimized, right? And calling it done versus having actually a potentially larger, better peak down the road. So to some level, you need to continue to test things that you may have tested in the past, right? And be comfortable doing that. So when we talk about, your website, it's what worked today. It probably won't work in 3 months, or won't work as effectively. And you see this consistently where if we're always testing and retesting and getting things back into the flow, then we'll have things that have lost in the past that will end up winning again. And you can kind of expect that there's a new website that probably goes live every minute and and it's a new experience, and there's new user experiences, best practices, all these things that come around. So we have to keep iterating and keeping, actually retesting things that may not have won in the past and making sure we're paying attention to that.
That's funny. It just reminds me of when I first got into the business where people would be like, hey, did you see that website that launched today? And now one probably more than every minute. It's wild.
Like a first announcement.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's that the world is changing at any point in time. So it is interesting to kind of keep that in the pipe. And the hypotheses are changing and the way we react to it. So that being said, then I think it begs the question from a scalability standpoint, things like that. So now where does automation come into play? I mean, are they related to the tools that we're using or the things that we're thinking about? To make this scalable, we have to have tools and automation. So how does that play out?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge right now is getting enough, different types of variations into the market, right? So you have to have different ad types. You're going to have different pieces of creative messaging. But I think that's overhyped a little bit. I think there's everyone kind of says, oh, we're going to need so many resources. We're going to need so much creative. Or we're going to write so much ad copy. And I don't think that's the case. I think you need to, maybe select 3 variations and test, like what we always do is prioritize based on, the audience, highest value, channels that are converting at the highest rates, and start there and then kind of work your way backwards from there. But it does put a little bit more stress on you to, as a marketer, to start thinking more strategically about, the consumer experience and creating the assets to change the consumer experience. And the algorithms from there are going to get those pieces in the market and help you optimize towards the best one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the operative word that I pull out from that is value, and understanding where is the highest value. Well, who's your highest value audience? What's the highest value tactic, so that you there can prioritize. I think that's where a lot of times people kind of miss that part, is which of my audiences are going to deliver the greatest results for me. And if I prioritize based on that, I'm going to get a better return that refunds the next thing I'm going to test.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an ever changing process, and it's all part of the fun. I think that's, everyone enjoys the science experiment of all. Can't help, on the behind the scenes look of it. Do you guys ever bet on the outcomes? You just throw down some money, say, I think this one's going to win.
Yeah, usually it's me fighting like an emotional attachment I have to a specific variation, just because this is my horse in the race, so to speak, most of the time.
Right.
And I think there is sometimes some side bets that are going on.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is how often you're probably not right too, because it is a personal bias and it's not based on the audience, and that's what marketers do have to realize, is sometimes they have to get outside of yourself and recognize you're not necessarily the audience.
Marketers aren't quite used to pulling the ego out of everything. I think we're getting better about it.
It's not just marketers, it's clients too. I mean, I think one of the cool things about optimization and the fast data is that you don't have people, just basically putting up the 2 things that everybody in the boardroom thought was the best and going with that. You can put a lot of options out there and let the actual world tell you what works best. On the Google side with automation, I mean, they're putting things out where you give it 14 different headlines and 5 different descriptions and let the machine match it up based on what it understands from the user and where the user is in the funnel, whether they've been to your site, and variation after variation, and put those things together for the best possible outcome, for the best possible ad match to where they're at. And so, to Justin's point, you can test a lot quicker. You don't have to go through so many approval processes. The automation stuff is here to kind of lessen those burdens, because those have been where people have fought. I don't have the time to write those ads. I don't have the time to make those variation changes. And then you do nothing, and doing nothing is just falling behind and really giving Google or everyone else the money that's building those nice buildings for them.
Yeah. Do you think that the marketers, talking about all of this and letting the crowd decide, do you feel there's some fear losing some control of it? I mean, you used to be able to say thumbs up, thumbs down. This is the version I'm going with because I feel it's right for the brand. Now you're saying, well, let's see what the community decides. There's got to be a little bit of fear there.
Yeah, we see that a lot, and especially with some of the older industries, ones that, banking or real estate, the ones that are a little less to adapt to the quick change in digital marketing. When they hear something like, well, give me 14 headlines and 5 descriptions of your product, and we'll let this machine put out a message for you and your brand. That doesn't sit well at all. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of pushback. And again, the platforms start to recognize that. So they give you options of like pinning certain things. So you want to make sure your brand tagline appears a certain spot in the ad. You can do that in certain platforms, or other ones are adapting that as well. So there's kind of a balance between the automation and the brand protection, I think, that's going to be fought out over the next, few months or a couple of years. But once again, I mean, the brands that are slow are the brands that pay more at the end of the day. I mean, unfortunately, it's like if ABC said, we're just doing 15-second commercials at the end of the day, do you stop making commercials because you don't like the idea of a 15-second commercial, or do you lose that entire audience? Well, Google's that audience now. So you kind of have to do some things to adhere to them, even if it is kind of against your gut for your brand.
Yeah. Well, so I guess we're saying nothing to be afraid of. We still get to make decisions and hopefully put more money back into the toward profit and things like that. So guys, Kevin, Justin, appreciate you joining me here on the Marketing Remix, talking optimization. We'll have some show notes and have the blog post for if anyone wants to relive this experience or check it out on the website. So guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see our audience next time.